You ever seen a ghost? Been abducted? Heard your name whispered from the other room when you're all alone? No, you say? Me either. But if you're like me, you're still fascinated by the paranormal. It seems everyone else has had an experience, and you want to believe it all. So why doesn't it happen to us? What does it all mean? How does it work? Is any of it real? Welcome to Paranorm Girl, a show that will attempt to answer these questions by taking the paranormal completely apart in search of proof. I'm not a blind believer, nor a hardened skeptic. I'm just looking for answers and willing to accept what I find. Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. And welcome to the bonus episode prior to the season conclusion. In the vein of our season subject, demons and possession, I really couldn't think of a better guest to have on the show than the one you are about to hear from, Archbishop and Exorcist Plato Angelakis. Is that not the coolest name you have ever heard? I mean, what else was he gonna do? And to hear him tell it, there never was going to be anything else for him. Not if the divine force, the ultimate creative, whatever you like to call it, had anything to do with it. Sometimes it's just like that. We're called to be and do certain things. Plato is not your average exorcist. He gets into it a little at the beginning and then later in the episode, but we talked for around a half hour prior to even hitting the record button. I want to impress upon you my first impressions of this man, because I really didn't know what to expect. He is inclusive of the paranormal and inclusive of all gifts that might be implied in this arena, which my biased self can certainly appreciate. I'll let him tell you all about it. Please enjoy my conversation with Plato Angelakis. Archbishop Plato Angelakis was ordained a Catholic priest with the Oblates of St. Therese in Wisconsin in 1999. He is an independent priest in the Old Roman Catholic Rite. He's an active member of the American Association of Exorcists since 2013 and holds a certificate of Registered Exorcist and Deliverance Minister. Elevated to bishop with the Mexican National Catholic Church in 2009, elevated to archbishop and official representative for the Mexican National Catholic Church for Canada in 2018. Currently, he presides as Archbishop of the Holy Order of St. Michael the Archangel and Archdiocese of the Mexican National Catholic Church in Canada. He is an exorcist in communion with the Sacred Order of St. Michael the Archangel in California. Plato is a registered nurse. He holds a BA of Arts at Mission Valley Bible College, a doctorate of ministry at St. Benedict's Seminary, and a doctorate of divinity at Seminario Pontificio Mayo. The Paranorm Girl podcast is so pleased to welcome Archbishop and Exorcist Plato Angelakis.
Hello there.
Hi, thank you
How
so
you doing?
much. Hey, doing good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing great. I hope you're doing well yourself.
Absolutely. Well, this is really a treat for me and an honor, considering the topic of education this season that we have covered, all on demons and possession. I've covered topics like exorcism, infested locations, haunted objects, demonology. So I'm really curious to learn maybe what I have gotten wrong, but also just to learn another view and experience on the matter. And you certainly have a lot of personal experience with it. So before we get into it, could you give my listeners a little bit of your backstory and what ultimately led you to becoming an archbishop and exorcist?
Wow. Well, I believe it or not, all my life I wanted to become a police officer, but that just didn't seem to pan out. So I don't know. I've always been drawn to the religion, and that's why I studied so much of it. And my grandmother took me to church every Sunday, and I always wanted to go, and no one else wanted to take me. And I was just enthralled with it. So I wanted to become an Orthodox priest because I was born and raised as a Greek Orthodox, an Eastern Rite. But I didn't speak enough Greek at the time that they felt it would be enough to join their seminary. So that didn't work out. I got a little disappointed, and I was down about it. And then I said, Later on, when I got married, I converted to Catholicism because my wife was Catholic, and so I just decided to do that. And then I decided, well, maybe I'll become a permanent deacon in the Catholic Church. I tried over 8 years twice. It didn't work out. So it just seems like it didn't want to pan out the way I wanted it to pan out. It wanted to pan out the way God wanted it. So after I decided, well, I'm just going to give up. I don't think this is meant to be. I went to a retreat, religious retreat out in Wisconsin. Ran into an archbishop from the independent old Roman Catholic Church, and he took me under his wing and trained me and ordained me priest. Later on, I became an oblate at St. Teresa. And I just, I just became a priest along with my registered nurse job, and just, helped to did the normal marriages, baptisms, those sorts of things, preaching and that sort of thing. Later on, I was invited by the Mexican National Catholic Church to be consecrated a regular bishop, and that happened. And as time went on, I ended up representing Canada for the Mexican National Catholic Church, so I became an archbishop. That was great. Now I'm an archbishop. I figured that's great. I can ordain my own priest. I can do this. I can do that. I'm still working as an RN, registered nurse. One day I got a call from a team out in the Ottawa, Ontario area, and that they had a case that they were investigating, and they came across a demonic situation, something that they sort of couldn't handle, something that was over their heads. And I said, well, they reached out to me. I said, oh, sure, I'll come down, no big deal, and got my book, my ritual book, and off I went. And that's when I realized, first of all, I had lots of training and need to learn. It was basically an experience. I was basically reading from a ritual book, but it was very successful. Being my first time, it took an understanding that there needs to be an acceptance of the gift and the calling, if that's what you want to call it. That I would change my approach, and that's how things got started. And ever since then, it just seems to never look back at it. It seems like that's all that I've done. To give an example, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Right.
I have,
I mean, a lot of people have. So there's one scene. I always use this scene as an example because it was the best way to describe my situation. When that priest decided to go to the exorcist home, he's all possessed and he's alone. He can't get any help. He has no support. He's got the reporter, obviously, with him. He's going there and he's just reading. He basically just reading from a book. He's just reading the words. There's no meaning behind the words. You just read the words. I cast you out. Demon, whatever. And, tell me your name, demon. And the demon just laughed at him because he just basically read the word. And then he runs down the stairs and he's discouraged. And, the reporter's telling him, everything in your life brought you to this point. You were meant for this. And then when he went back up, he changed his approach. And he says, I do believe in the devil. And therefore, no, I'm casting you out. And then the whole demeanor of obviously the demon changed because now his approach is different. He went in with more boldness and veracity. And so there was a belief in himself that, okay, I have the gift. This is my calling. Of course, the demon now realized he's done. So that whole change, that transference of knowing thyself, I went through that. And with this particular case, I went there on the first day. We were there 2 days. I went there. It was a bad case. Her parents were satanic ritualists, and now she's all grown up. When she was a little girl, she had missed a lot of things. And now she's been plagued by that. So her daughter had called us up and said about us, we need help and whatnot. And certainly, usually when a family member has to call a person so far in, it's hard for them to ask for help. The first time, for me, to be honest, it was a total failure. I went in there and it was like, we got thrown across the room. She broke through her binds. I had to bound her chair. Ever since I thought I thought I knew what I was doing. No, not in the least. I had no idea what the heck was going on. So I read in the book, nothing was working. We approached it the next day differently. I went, and for me, it wasn't just reading the words. I had to believe in the words of the ritual. I had to believe in my ability. I had to believe in the gift that was given to me. At that point, I realized that this was my calling. This is where God had led me. The second day was totally different, like night and day. And clearly, she got liberated, and everything was fine. Everything went well. And then from that moment on, I joined that particular team who had called me and became a member of their team, and that's how I started doing cases with them. And of course, that spread to various other cases and paracons, and it led me to where I am today. But of course, along the way, I had to learn. It's not something like just you're born with this. You learn from mistakes, and you go in with those mistakes differently. And so my approach has changed. Although many priests might do exorcism in a different way, I will do it my way because I find my way works for me, and I'm very successful. But it's something that I had learned as I went along, making those mistakes, learning new things, and seeing the success of certain things and the not so much success on other things. So this where led me to being where I am, of course. Yeah, and it seems like that's all I do. I don't do it very many marriages anymore or baptisms. I do the odd one here and there, but for friends and family. But for the most part, it's paranormal 100%. Um, so that's where it all led. So obviously, like I said, we spoke earlier. I said, not I who chose you. God says, sorry, it's I who chose you. You didn't choose me, but He chose me to do a certain thing. And there's
Yeah.
some priests out there that are great at preaching. There are others that are great in ministry, the sick in the hospital. Others are great at healing. Some people can be on a pulpit and do a great sermon and just move you, where others are not. They're more boring, right? So we all have our own special gifts, even within the clergy. And it just seems that, I go in and, I'm more bold. I'm aggressive. My whole demeanor will change. I'm talking to you now, or down to earth. We could be first name basis. I could be talking, and then 5 minutes later, okay, it's time to do the exorcism. I'll pray, and then when I get up, you'll just see my whole demeanor change. I'm just a total different person. I'm like more of a warrior now. It's like okay, the battle begins, and it's like okay, you're going down. I think so. It just changes, and I have to change because I realize I can't go in with the same. Now it's a spiritual battle, and I need to
Right.
be taking it on in that particular sort of attitude. So that's where I am. It took a lot. It was a big journey of a lot of things. And as I look at it now, I'm going back, looking at what circumstances, and of course there were a lot of people who turned me down. No, I don't want you to be a deacon in the Catholic Church. No, I don't want you to be Greek Orthodox priest. No, I don't want you to be this. I don't want you to be that. This is what I want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And ended up being the independent church, which basically God knew I needed to be able to do things without the politics involved, and of course have the authority to do what I have to do, and of course the experience that came with it. So it was all pre-planned by God, from day one to lead me down that particular path.
You were called ultimately to become an exorcist, and that sounds like it was later in the process. Like it's not something that.
It was a final thing. Once you became ordained, I did the
Mm.
training, I did the seminary, I did the theology, I did all that stuff. And then, of course, okay, now it's all said and done. What do I do? Okay, well, I can preach, do that, write some books, do some marriages, baptisms, and I was happy with that. I was content. I was helping people. I was bringing the ashes on Ash Wednesday to my job, my workplace, because people couldn't go to church, so I would bring the ashes to them. I would bless objects for people. I would hear confessions, on during Easter. People can't make it to church, so I would hear confessions for some of my peers. Of course, everything's confidential. It has to be to seal confession. And basically minister to people that couldn't make it. Like, being a nurse, I'm a shift worker, but there was also firefighters, EMS, doctors, other nurses, all sorts of shift workers, first responders that can't get to church. So I basically, provided my services that way. The people who wanted it but couldn't go, I was there. They wanted palms on Palm Sunday, I provided them. They wanted ashes on Ash Wednesday, I provided it. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to actually go to the church to get it. At least you got that. Or a blessing or a prayer, or if you wanted something blessed, obviously you should work and you work straight nights. I would do it for you at work. So things like that. And I was happy. I was content.
Yeah.
It was that one call, go and do an exorcism, or to go in and investigate and see if I could do anything with this individual. Of course, I read about it. There's some books on it. I had some knowledge, but very limited. I thought just going in with my ritual book, which I have an actual ritual book, in Latin, and I thought, well, if I just read from the words, that should be enough. And like the movie, the words are not enough. You need to put your heart in it. You need to believe in it. You need to be a part of it and be that warrior when you need to be. So that was a transformation from just a regular bishop priest into something a little more extraordinary. So, and then of course I've been building up on that sense with more training. Then obviously Vatican training, because even though I'm not part of Rome, they do have a great university and a place where clergy go to learn all sorts of things. During the COVID-19 restrictions, I did a lot of online through Rome. I only did it for a week, so there was a lot of that available to us, and it was very interesting because they brought a lot of psychologists, they brought a lot of secular people to help, because you need to approach it from the okay, is this person mentally ill, or is this person demonically possessed, or is it a combination of both? You can have both.
Right,
So
right.
we try to help them, spiritual, so physically, and then spiritual after. But we need to visit both.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad. I learned recently that the Vatican actually opened up their
Mm-hmm.
exorcism training quite widely to, all over the world, to more
Mm-hmm.
independent or any other denomination. So they opened up that training finally, and it's been that way for a little while. So,
They still made it hard because you still need to get permission from your local bishop. They make it sound like it's open to everybody, but clearly they still have a lot of control over who they want to let in. They
oh,
want like I even myself not being part of Rome, I had to get the consent from the local archbishop in the area. Part of the ordinary. They call them the ordinary because it's part of the regular diocese. To let them know that I know this guy that can vouch for him, and because you have to have references and a bunch of other things. So it wasn't just like, oh, I want to apply for the course. It didn't work as easy as that. It was still difficult to get in. They're still very protective,
I got you.
very controlling.
Okay. Well, you also mentioned working with a paranormal team. I'm glad you brought up paranormal investigating in that aspect. Do you actually work side by side with that regular team, like regularly, or is it a case by case
Mm-hmm.
basis? And okay, can you talk about that a little bit? Talk about your team.
Yeah, it varies. I mean, for the most part, I will bring who I can bring. I mean, a lot of people's times are restricted. And because, I mean, I can say this for a fact that the fourth largest volunteer society in the world is the paranormal. We do everything for free, for the most part, and everybody gives their time and their effort, and they take time with their families. So we do a lot. Like people really shouldn't be charging these clients. We should be doing it, like to help them. But having said that, I have one particular partner that I work with, and because she possesses that's Sister Kia. She was a pagan witch when I met her, and she converted to Catholicism and became wanted to be a sister. So I consecrated her a sister. Not a full nun because she is a single mom with a child. So she took her minor orders, meaning she's taking her vows as a minor order. She's not going to be obviously in a convent, but she can work in the community, go wear the veil and whatnot, and be an assistant to me. But the sisters of her caliber are the ones that will also lay their hands on people and perform exorcism rites, even though they're not clergy. They are consecrated. So I use her. I use her primarily when I can. She's available for the most part. But some cases require a full in-house investigation where I want the person to go in, set up the equipment, do the nighttime, go around with the flashlights and the EVP meters and all those things, and then come back with some kind of evaluation and say, okay, there's definitely activity here. Definitely we captured some things. We also have extensive interviews, and I've got people who help me with that. Sister Kia is also a nurse, and myself a nurse, and so we might go in and do vital signs. We review medications. I may get asked for consent to talk to your doctor. I want to see your medical history. I want to make sure, if you have a heart condition, I'm going to start tying you down and throwing holy water and saying the power of Christ compels you, then you're not going to have a heart attack on me. And you have to be careful because you have to know how far to push and then stop. let things rest. It's just that's part of the process. That's part of the ritual. But we do vital signs. We have blood pressures like throughout the whole process. We videotape it. We get extensive consent forms signed. We will speak to doctors. We'll speak to family. So it's a long process, and it's not just simply just going in one day and just doing it and be done with it. We also just don't also just leave the client. We give a lot of teaching, a lot of education, and they need to change. They need to change what they're doing because obviously what they were doing wasn't working. They need to. I walk into a house and say, "Where's your crucifix? It's not on the wall. Where's your Bible? It's not on the table. When do you go to church? I haven't been there in 30 years. We've never been baptized. Never did this. Never did that." Well, these are some of the things that will open things up, open you up for obviously an attack or an oppression or an attachment. So you need to change, your habits. You're going to start going to church. You're going to start. I don't care, and I don't even care what church it is. It's a good Bible church, a good, spiritual church you're happy with. It gives you what you need. You pray with family. Get the Bible out. Read some scripture. Get the crucifix. Get your blessed objects out. It's a process, but so it all depends on what I'm doing. I will bring in an entire team of everybody, researchers, leaders, investigators, psychic, sensitives, whatever that I need. And then sometimes it's just Kia and myself that goes in because that's what I need. I need I can say, okay, there's definitely something here. I don't need to investigate it. It's definitely something here.
Right.
We go in. She goes in actually ahead of me, and I kind of send her in. If I have more than one person, sometimes I have two people who are sensitive. I'll send both in and individually, and they come back and tell me individually what you picked up, and then we sort of that allows me to create a game plan. Okay, how we're going to approach this. There might be some spirits, earthbound spirits that have left. There might be multi-dimensional things that have happened during different time periods, all at the same time. There might also be a demon hanging around, sucking up the energy of the people who are left behind. And that's normally what they do. The demons just don't get the energy on their own. They need to take it somewhere. And the people who are left behind are distraught, can't move forward. Demons there to start keeping them as an energy source. So once I'm able to move those souls forward into the light, which is the next journey, the demon doesn't have the energy to sustain itself. I'm not able to remove it. So it all depends on the circumstance. But yeah, I've got various people who I can draw from. Sometimes I'll just go in and just sit down and or sometimes, on a good day, I don't want to wear the clergy uniform. I'll just give me a flashlight, an EVP meter, and let me go. And sometimes I just have fun doing that too, right?
Yeah.
So it's fun and to do that. So again, but the thing is, a lot of people don't want me to do investigations because when I go in, there's no activity. They're all quiet. Okay, but Sister Kia, she is a crab magnet. She draws them out. Oh my God! Like when she goes in, all kinds of activity. So if you want activity, you want her there. So she's the one who gets the invites for the investigation. I get to sit in the back and hold up the vending machine. But anyway, who wants water? Okay, here
Yeah.
like because they don't want me there because as soon as I go in, then there's no activity whatsoever.
Yeah.
But
You're the cooler. You're the chiller.
yeah,
What do they call them in Vegas?
yeah. But I'm there for people who will pray. I pray over them. I give them blessings. I mean, if you
Yeah.
go on YouTube and look up blessing of the Occult Museum for the Warrens. I did like the Annabelle and the Conjuring Mirror. I did a blessing there. So I mean, I make sure everybody gets blessed. You can see what I've done. I get my holy water and oil prepared on the outside. I bless everybody. Then we go in and we do the full blessing, and Annabelle and whatnot. So, and when Annabelle is on display, I usually will go to the event and I make sure I tell people if you don't want a blessing before you leave, but just because if you want to feel safe after you've been exposed to all these negative, evil artifacts, come see me. Well, at one point my lineup is bigger than Annabelle's lineup, and then she gets all upset that I'm getting I stole her thunder. you know, Annabelle's getting less selfies, and I'm getting more. My lineup is long for the blessing.
Eh,
So,
I'm glad you
um,
brought that up. I was going to ask you later about haunted objects and such, but the picture that you sent standing next to Annabelle, I was like, there's got to be a
oh
story behind that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I got a call from NESPAR, the New England Society of Paranormal Research, which is the Ed and Lorraine Warren team in
Hmm.
Connecticut, and they called me up. They said they had a case of a girl out in Europe, I believe it's Belgium. This was a few years ago, but unfortunately, they're trying to raise money to bring her to America, and they want to document. I got called to see if I would document an actual exorcism. And now she is definitely possessed. She's getting help, but she's still not quite, being helped with the COVID and the lack of funds. She's still there, and she hasn't come here. So anyway, having said that, I was called by a team in Finland, a gentleman who wants to direct. He did a movie documentary called oh goodness, what was it called? Hostage of the Devil, and it was a really good hit. And it was about Father Malachi.
Yeah, I
And
saw
anyway,
it. It
and
was
so
really interesting.
yeah, so they wanted me to do part two. That's basically what they wanted to bring me in and carry on where he left off,
Oh,
because
wow.
he didn't finish what he did, because he mysteriously died after some of that. We're not sure what happened.
Right.
So the person wanted me to come in and do part two and finally do the possession of this individual that he was planning on doing initially, which never got done. So I said, well, they're having an Annabelle event in Connecticut, and I brought Sister Keela with me. And I said, well, I'm going to go down and just speak to the team. And then have coffee and go for dinner, and of course go there and I'll meet Annabelle and do the whole thing. Just be part of the process. But I apparently went down there just to have a conversation and said, okay, let's talk about this case. How do you want to approach it? What do you think? We should do. And of course, there's pictures of me and Tony Spera talking, whatever. He invited me up, and I started blessing well, Tony asked me, do you want to come to the Occult Museum, have a look, and do a blessing? Because, I've had a priest come. These guys have a priest there once a month to do a blessing. I thought, well, certainly. So I went there, and of course, I'm very thorough, and you can see the whole process on YouTube. And we went and did the whole thing. The fire alarms went off because we've got to shut them off. We had the incense going. And then we went to the event and did my blessing, did whatever for people. And at the end of it all, Tony and the team asked me, with Kia and myself, to join up and be spiritual consultants for the team. And any cases they have, that I could join them. Because, of course, they're carrying on the legacy. Ed and Lorraine have passed on, rest in peace. But they're now, a lot of what they did is now in movies. Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. The Annabelle comes home, and they'll maybe do it. These are all actual objects. The dinosaur, I've seen all this, right? And I've seen the actual artifacts. So now the next generation, like now it's Tony Spera with Judy, the daughter, grown up. They're running the team, and we've got a bunch of new members. Myself and Sister Gia, of course, are included in that. And we've done a couple cases before COVID came through. I was in New Jersey doing a case, and we were, and there's another place in Connecticut we did another case. And then everything had to stop because the border closed. The Canadian and U.S. border had closed for like almost 2 years, so they couldn't cross the border. I couldn't go down there, being the only Canadian member on the team. With Kia, both of us being Canadian, we couldn't cross. So a lot of things we couldn't get involved in. So there were a few paracons and things that we couldn't participate. This year we're going down, so we'll be part of that, and it'll be great. Yeah, and I mean, I've held the doll in my bare hands, and I've been fine. Where everybody else has to use rubber gloves, holy water, and because she is a very dangerous doll,
Yeah, yeah.
very, very evil. Even in the case, she's done a lot of damage. People have gone home and saying, bad things have happened. I mean, if you're going to come and spend $100 and something to come visit Annabelle at an event and take selfies or whatnot, you need to be prepared. It's sort of like put yourself at risk sometimes. You need to be really prepared. That's why I offer the blessings before you leave, so everybody can get home safely. Because Annabelle has actually hurt people, but these artifacts are real. They've been collected. They're locked up. They're not on display any longer, and there's blessings done every month, hopefully, just to keep the negative under containment.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but yeah, that was the first experience. I was down to see Annabelle by any means, but just that one visit really opened a lot of doors for me to join the team, participate, and be able to work with them. And we still do. Of course, that opened up more doors for more things. So because they needed a priest that was willing to go and do things where, they were going to their local diocese, and they're like, well, I can't help you. We got to call my bishop. We got to call Rome, and so there was obstacles there. They didn't want to be filmed. They didn't want to be. Some of them didn't want to be involved. Some of them don't believe in the paranormal. Some of them don't want to be involved, and about they don't. It's very strictly controlled how they sort of politically control who gets the exorcism, who gets investigated, those sorts of things. Their criteria and their vetting, it's very similar to mine, but it's more extensive
Mm-hmm.
and much longer over the span of time. Where if you go to them and say, I think my so and so is possessed or whatever, and you get investigated, and they say, sure, okay, we're going to do it. It may take a year or 2 years before you actually get it done. Well, with me, it might be a couple of months, because I also very, I go extensively vet people and then check the medical history and make sure they're not schizophrenic, because we're also presented as being demonic. So I have to make sure that it's not just something that's medically, that it is something that's true. And there are ways, and I don't need to go through it now because it's really hard. But I was trained to determine to see if it's actually a medical problem, mental health problem, or a spiritual problem, or a combination. It could be a combination of both. So there's a way of determining certain things, trying different tricks and trying to figure out the responses and whatnot. So, but yeah, that's how I got involved now with an SPAR team. So again, it went from one little small paranormal team in a local town to joining a very well-renowned team that is very well established and have history, a lot of resources, and a lot of experience.
I love that you work with all of these different types of people with their various gifts, and that you are so inclusive of the paranormal aspect in all of this. And that reminded me, actually, Bishop James Long. I follow him over on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
and he's also been involved in the paranormal field for a very long
Mm-hmm.
time. And he recently posted something that I thought was really interesting. You might have an opinion on it. He was talking about, just like you were, like how some in the clergy have been a little critical of the work and research that he does with all of those paranormal endeavors. And he was explaining basically the line that he draws between his work with the paranormal and then what he does with the demonic. He was saying that he would continue to be involved with the paranormal community, and that he would also continue teaching about demonology because it was specifically theological and not paranormal. Like they're two different things. What would you say about that distinction?
Well, yeah. Well, there's like you need to cross. Like there needs to be. You need to be able to separate the one from the other, but they're really intertwined in a way. We follow scripture, and we need to follow the fact that it is quite clear that we need to be careful on how you approach it. It's all about attitude, how you approach it. You can't just vaguely just go around and just accept everybody's gifts. Okay, you're a demonologist, you're this, you're that. You do tarot cards. You have to draw the line to certain things, because there are variations of that, and there's the white and there's the dark, of all those things as well. I mean, you get a white witch, you get a dark witch, So there's the dark side, and I have been exposed to some of the demonic rituals. I specifically went out and kind of undercover, you know, um, got myself into a group to see what they actually do. So for me, it was a learning process, and so there is a darker aspect to some of this, the paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
the rituals they do and whatnot. So we need to be very careful about what your gifts are and what your intentions are, and where your heart is. Yeah, there is a fine line. I mean, I don't know Bishop Long well. I know of him. I think it might be on my Facebook. We don't. His theological sort of upbringing is different. I believe he did a lot of scholastic teaching. He went to school, seminaries and things, whatever. He's old Roman Catholic, which I've been consecrated, and I can get into that a little bit. He's from a different line. He does a lot of TV work as well, and I've seen some of his work, and there's some things that I don't agree with. I'll be honest, and some things are okay, because I just because of my training. Some things are lacking, and I don't know. I mean, to me, I use the medium as a teaching. I don't use the medium as entertainment. And so I've seen some of his work, and a lot of it, some of it is entertaining, and other times it's educational. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak of the man. I don't know um, what his thoughts are on. I think I think it's fair to say that we are individuals, and we have been brought by God to go our own, like we have a different journey, and but we have like we've been given a task. He's got his, and I got mine. So yeah, you need to separate them because like I said, I mean, I can put on my full garb and be Vatican. I can have my sash, red sash. I can look like one of the cardinals. By the way, I'm up to be a cardinal, believe it or not. So
Oh,
so
really? Oh, wow.
yeah, so I will have the orange. So I'm gonna have the orange. So I'm gonna look like you see them on TV. It's called a cardinal outfit. So I mean,
Yeah.
you go out with a fancy ring and the fancy glasses and all the gold and everything, and you go out all dressed in the gills, and people look at you and say, "Oh my God, your eminence," and all this, and it's all, the whole demeanor changes, and it's like everybody looks at you differently. Then you take everything off, and you wear your regular jeans and a t-shirt, and you go in there and do an investigation. And of course, you're not the same person anymore, but yet you are. So there's a time when you need to wear that outfit and be the cardinal or the bishop, and there's a time that you can be a little more lax and embrace the things we talked about, like the gifts and whatnot. So you need to be able. Like, I agree with him in that respect. You need to separate it. Um, because again, it goes along the lines where people just get up in the morning and say, "I want to start a paranormal team today." That's on Facebook, and then there's just a bunch of young kids with no experience, just this is cool. I want or ghost hunters and whatnot. They go out to the nearest hardware store for $19.99. You get your starter kit. You get a little EVP meter, or you get this. And, so there are so many teams, and some are well prepared, some are ill prepared, and so this is a lot of the training. And that's where I know where he's coming from. He wants to teach these paranormal teams to be prepared, but they need to have a distinction and say, okay, you need to know your boundaries. When you go and you do an investigation, you come across something that's clearly demonic, dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know, okay, now I'm over my head. Now I need to be able to stand back and call for help, not try to say, well, I'm dealing with all this. I can take this on. That's when you get into trouble. And this is where I think he's coming from, I believe. And I agree with him in that regard. Like, that it's time to say, okay, time for the team to leave, and it's time for the priest or the bishop or the exorcist to come in and do their part. So there needs to be that separation sometimes. Because we also have, because as clergy, we need to follow scripture, the dogma. We can't deviate from that. Because if we do, then we're really not the priests and bishops, because we have taken vows to uphold the teachings of Christ. We can't just say, well, we'll just take that portion, but not that portion. We have to embrace it all or nothing.
Right.
So
Right.
this is what I need to relay to people in the community, and that's why. But I see where he's coming from. I've seen some of his work. I see he has a lot of TV. I do a lot more paracons, and that's perfectly fine. It's a medium he uses to express his views and his teaching, and it's perfectly fine. I haven't worked with the man. He comes from a different line, of apostolic line, which is not necessarily bad or good. What distincts what people need to understand what distincts us from possible. And there are a lot of clergy up there that are not really valid, and there are a lot of clergy that are truly valid. And the one determination that proves it is you have to be able to show your apostolic succession. That's what it's called. So basically, God God gave to Christ, Christ gave to the apostles gave to the laying of the hands. passed it on to, bishops and whatever through the passage of time. And then I can go through every name, every bishop, every cardinal, every priest, right to the Apostle James to show that that's the lineage. Because obviously, think about it, James went west to Spain after the crucifixion, crossed over to the, of course, then his people he ordained and whatnot ended up over in South America, moved their way north into Mexico. Thus, Mexico National Catholic Church is all attached to James. And every apostle went a different route. So that's my line. But so again, and the belief in and it's the never to doubt in my abilities. That's what makes you successful. Is to know two things: that God is not 80% effective on Friday and 90 on Saturday and maybe 100 on Sunday and 20 on Monday. He's 100% all the time. So when you're going in to cast out a demon or to do anything of cleansing, you're going in with that full confidence, no doubt whatsoever, that it's gone. It isn't like the movies where, okay, there'll be a sequel, Annabelle comes back, kind of thing. That's Hollywood. That doesn't fly. Exorcisms in the real world are actually boring. You go in, I cast you out, they have to obey, end of story. Period. Because I'm using the full hand of God. And it is not I. That's part of ritual. It is not I who commands you. It is Christ who commands you. It is God who commands you. It is the Holy Ghost who commands you. It's the saints who command you, and whatnot. So I'm using the authority of God. It's basically I'm using God's power. In essence, if you read the theology behind it, Jesus said, as the Father sent me. In other words, everything God gave to Christ during 2,000 years ago. The Father sent me, I sent you. And later on, I'm paraphrasing, later on he says, and you will do greater things than I. And that speaks volumes. If you think about it, you think, wow, everything that God gave to Christ, Christ gave to James, James through the line gave to me. So in essence, I could actually, I have the same ability that Christ has. The forgiveness of sins, the blessings, everything. And he says, what is bound on earth is bound in heaven. In other words, whatever I do here on earth, God will accept as, if you forgive someone their sins, God says they're forgiven. So it is that passing down. So that's where the authority comes from, the power. It's not me. I'm nothing. It's ordinary person. But when it comes to do what I have to do for God, then that power, that's God's power. So how can you sustain that? I mean, how can the devil say, well, nah, I don't think so. No, it's God who commands you. Like, okay, I got to go now. Pack your bags. So, there is no debate. That's just the way that it is. And I mean, what can I say? That's the gift. That's the calling, and with the calling comes that authority that backs it up, which is the power of God. And likewise, all the other gifts, whatever gifts are given, God puts that authority and that power for that gift behind it. So again, I don't know what apostolic line Bishop Long is, but that's he's got to follow the line, and you have to be able to prove. When people say you are, this church, that church, and some people criticize me about, oh, you're in this church, I don't think that's a good church, or that's the proper church. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I'm in this church or that church. I can follow my apostolic line, right to James. So I know that the laying of the hands, Jesus put his hands on James, and James did the same through the passage of time. And I have every name that he did. Like I have the records are all there in the archives, and you can go and you can follow right to me. And then of course I've consecrated a few bishops. They're back in Italy now doing their own ministry work, and of course they've added my name to their list, so they can follow that. That's what makes it valid. And that's what gives me my authority. So when I go in, I'm going in with the authority of God, saying, "It's not me, buddy. It's God." What are you going to say to that? Nothing.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah.
Pack your bags. So that's where people need to understand that the authority comes from that, not necessarily, oh, well, you're in this church or that church. No, not necessarily. Yeah, that's ministry. It's basically you're following that line of authority. But yeah, to answer that question, I mean, I mean, he's doing what he needs to do in his own way, he feels. And using the medium is not a bad thing because it's a good way to get to people, more people.
Sure.
But yeah, he has to cross the line because some people will just are not prepared. Like we'll give you a quick example. I was at a Paracon in Upper New York State a few years back, and there was a person in the audience, but he had a question. He raised his hand. I said, "What's your question?" Said, well, if I watch the movie The Exorcist, the original one, in the 1970s, if I watch that, will I get affected? Will I be affected? Will I get possessed? Will I, have an affliction or attachment? I said, well, what is the motive behind you watching that movie? Is it because you want to learn, exorcisms? Do you want to? Is it for entertainment purposes? And he said, well, I'm part of a paranormal team, and if I ever come across a demonic case, I want to be able to know what to do. Well, that movie was maybe 5% true. The rest was all fabricated.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're gonna use Hollywood to teach you to do that, you're gonna walk into a situation and you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna be bringing home so a wrong reason to watch the movie, because Hollywood is not a place to be like entertainment. I mean, even The Conjuring, the Annabelle. And I spoke to Tony Sparrow because he was part of the Warren team when that happened. He's also under contract with Warner Brothers because of the movies, and as a consultant. And he says, the movies are like maybe 30% true. The rest, it's just filling. So even the movies are not completely true. Stories are true, but a lot of the stuff that's added in is added in. So you just can't go by what you see in the movie.
Oh, Hollywood doesn't
Yeah.
exaggerate, Plato. No.
Oh, well, sure.
Well,
Just well. In my world, there's no sequel, and Hollywood is a sequel. Devil Comes Back. Attack. 2.0. No, in my world, you are gone.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think someone told me there was a spiritualist told me the devil has your picture up on a wall with a bounty, and the bounty is so high, but yet no one down there wants to take it on because when you set people down, they don't come back. so someone told me that actually, and it was kind of an odd statement to make, but okay, so the devil's got my picture up with a bounty, but no one wants to take the case. Go
Well, that's
figure.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, go figure. Well, it's interesting. You said something in there that caught my attention. So, do you think that it's the motivation that might invite possession in? Like, are you a little bit
It's
more
all about consent. Yeah, it's all about consent. I can touch on that, and I can tell you
okay?
exactly. It's the universal law. God says, you have free will, and that means basically I won't interfere. That's God. I won't interfere in your life unless you ask me. I won't send angels. I won't send this. I won't send that. Unless you ask for help, I will not intervene. That's free will. Likewise, that same rule applies to everybody, including the demonic. They cannot interfere in your life unless you give them consent. Now, consent can be direct consent, indirect consent, intergenerational consent. And I'm going to touch on some of these real quickly. In our world today, you turn on the TV, within 3 minutes, you're watching something evil. The pornography that's out there, our lax in our morality. We pretty much, normalized everything. These are all consents. They're indirect consents. There's some people who just go out there and just want to be demonically, worshippers or whatever, and that's one thing. And then you've got the other group that just, they're just lax in the morality, and then you have obviously the other groups that are paranormal groups that go in. They're not prepared. They're not prepared spiritually, and they come home worse off, or they leave the client worse off when they find them. I had a quick story. I had two people wanted to join me in a case. And I said, oh, sure, okay, come on in. You're going to hold this, you're going to hold that. And in we go. And the person that's in the chair that's sort of demonic looks at the girl and says, does your boss know you're stealing money from work? And he said to the guy, does your wife know you're cheating on her?
Oh, wow.
And they just ran around. They turned around and they ran out. Because, of course, being demonic, knowing you're demonic is the knowledge of the unknown, knowing things about people. So, they ran out. They weren't prepared. So this one thing that I had to learn is that my team, no one goes in unless everybody has their mindset and the clear-headed.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going through a divorce, you got money problems, you're going through problems with kids, problems at work, I don't want you there because you're weakening the chain. So we have to prepare, uh, fast, go to church, do the blessings, then we go in. We go in hot, heavy, and boom. Like that's the boldness. We're going in. Our mind is prepared, and there's nothing in our minds that can the demons or the evil can weaken us. Okay, and then of course you got to remember when you're knocking on Satan's door, knocking on the spirit world. They're going to answer. He's not knocking on our door. We're knocking on his door. So there's your consent. You're going in. If you're not prepared, you're not protected, you're not covered. You are really, in a sense, opening up yourself. So that in a sense is a form of consent, and you might end up bringing something home with you. No one told you to go knocking on Satan's door. Oh, let's go knock on his door. Let's go and knock on the spirit world. You see, the devil and all his fallen angels and what demons were, they were cast out. They weren't destroyed. And I hear people saying, "Well, I kill demons." You don't kill demons. God didn't kill demons. You're not going to kill demons. God didn't do that. He casted them out. He sent them to another level plane, kind of like a middle heaven. Like it's above us and it's God above him. They weren't destroyed. They were cast out. They kept all their angelic powers and whatnot. And so if you're going to go knocking on that realm, be prepared. Because it's a battle, and if you're not prepared, you're going to lose. These are ancient beings, billions of years old. Consent is, tarot card, Luigi boards. In itself, it's just a board, right? So we talked about
Mm-hmm.
intent. It's just a board with writing. Tarot card is just cards with some pictures on it.
Mm-hmm.
What you put into it, if this is a board now, it's going to be my portal. I'm going to bring
Yeah.
something out. I'm going to conjure. Now you change the essence now. That's you're putting intent in that. That's then you open yourself up to things. So that is the kind of things like Father Amorth. He was the head exorcist for Rome. He passed, I think, last year. He was 92. Brilliant guy. He wrote many books. I read them all. He was so good. Like we're told as priests never to ask the demon questions. Like, oh, by the way, what's the future? What's the lottery numbers next week? I command you to tell me. Give me that 7 number for the Powerball. I want them now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not me who asks. It's God asking. We can't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were not permitted to do that. Now, Father Amorth did, but he did so many exorcisms. I'm talking thousands of exorcisms that he took the liberty of asking, by the way, how did you possess this person? What did they do for you to get in there? And he wrote a book and started talking about some of the things that was revealed, and which really was quite interesting. And I'll give you one example. There's many, like when the groom wants to ask the father of the bride, "Can I have your daughter hand in marriage? Your blessing, blah blah blah." We think it's wonderful, it's romantic, it's but no, there's an actual historical thing behind all that. And if you're not going to bless the marriage, you're in fact cursing it, and that's a form of consent. Because the kids, they can be 30 years old, it doesn't matter, not married. They are still, in a sense, for lack of a better word, the property of the parents. So that's what the Bible says. The husband leaves his family to join her family. It's quite explicit. And they become one. One flower, like they become one, right? They join to become one. So you are really your parents' sort of responsibility, even at the age of 30 or 40 or even 20. It doesn't matter until you are handed over in marriage and become one in flesh and in spirit. So parents have enormous authority and power over their children. They say, "Well, I don't want you marrying him. I don't think he's a good guy. I'm not blessing this marriage." And then people ask why the next 5 generations every marriage fails because you've cursed that. There's some validity to that. That's what the demons was telling Father Amorth, that if you're not going to receive the blessing, you're receiving the curse. Having said that, I'm going to add that there's intergenerational ties as well. The demon says they can curse and afflict people up to 9 generations. So something your great grandmother might have been involved in can affect you. So I have rituals for that. Rituals that will break the intergenerational ties so that it stops here and then it doesn't go any further. But people say, why am I always cursed? I can't keep a job. My marriages fail. Blah, blah, blah. And then I'm thinking about, okay, it's intergenerational. You go back far, and I was like, great granny, was involved in seances or whatever, because that was big back in the 1920s and 30s, right? So and then of course, like manner, God also says, I will bless you and I will bless your seed and your family for 5 generations going forward. But for the demonic, I believe it's 9. And so this is what happens. So again, we need to, part of my exorcism and cleansing will include that to make sure that chain is broken and going forward, you're not afflicted by that. I had a lady who was 20, 30 years ago was using one of those magic pens, talk to me spirit, and, she was just journaling, and the pen would just write by itself, because she conjured that up, right? She says, well, I haven't done that in 20 years, but my marriage is failing, I can't seem to get a job, I'm broke, and this and that. And I said, well, give me your confession or whatever. And she says, well, I did this pen thing when I was younger, but I got rid of it all. I said, where's the pen? She said, I don't know. I said, I'm telling you, the pen is in the house. Even 20 years later, go through that whole house and find it. And she did. Then we got rid of the pen and everything changed. She put her intent in that pen. It's just a pen you buy from the store. But she took that pen and had conjured up something, say, I want to journal, tell me the future, tell me this, blah, 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 blah. And then she put that energy. It's all energy. We are all energy. So that's all we're doing. It's just a change of the energy. And the demons and the devils need the energy. They cannot cross into this plane unless we let them. And you know what? A lot of people today are doing so indirectly, not knowing what they're doing. And unfortunately, people are saying, well, the church or whatever, premarital sex, this and all that, and all the immorality that's going on. Everybody's normalized it. They think it's okay, but it's not. It's full of scripture, and it's not. And we'll open themselves up to this stuff because I've gone to a lot of homes, and people, I say, give me, I always have to hear the confession because that's part of the healing, right? Have a confession is part of another form of exorcism is confession, and within that confession, usually things are starting to come up that kind of gives you an indication of why you've been oppressed or what you did to open yourself up, and then we kind of correct that. So that's part of the process, but it's all about consent. That's the bottom line. And
okay,
unless you give it, they can't touch you. But a lot of people do it indirectly, and so that's all I can say.
okay,
It's just the world we live in. It's basically the world we live in, right? I mean, you turn on the TV, we watch horror movies, aggressive movies, gangster movies. Like a lot of violence and whatnot, and that, in a sense, will open up. It could open up. It depends on the individual. Some are more sensitive than others, so there's no way of knowing.
Okay. Well, with while we're in this subject of consent and possession, this might be a good place to put in. I have a listener submitted question, and I'm guessing I already know where this might or what you might have to say about this, but I just want to ask you in the way that they put it down. They ask, why does it only ever seem to be folks who are or have been religious who get possessed? Thank you so much for listening today, you guys. That was part 1 of my conversation with Plato Angelakis. If you would like to hear Plato's response to that listener question and more, stay tuned for part 2. That will be up on Tuesday. In the meantime, check out the links to follow and find my guest in the show notes. If you enjoy this show, the approach, my guests, the content, you can't wait to hear more, and want a very easy way to give some support, rate and review, babes. It takes but a moment and means so much to little guys like myself. Make your voices heard. Find me on all of the socials at Paranormal Girl Pod and paranormalgirlpod.com. Shoot me your experiences with the supernatural and strange. I love to hear from you. That is it until Tuesday, when we will pick up where we left off. Have a fantastic weekend, but stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.